Good evening and welcome to Monday's edition of Celtic Down Under, the weekend review from Western Australia, hosted again by myself, Sean, and once again joined by our now veteran contributors, Paul and Anthony. How was your weekend, Paul?
Yeah, pretty good. Obviously, a highlight being the match, but yeah, just I had a kid's first birthday party, which was okay. It could be worse.
Always riveting.
Yeah,
They'll remember it when they're older, and they'll hate you if you didn't,
Wasn't my kid, not having kids. Right. So it was just a friend who sort of pitched up, gave a gift, ate some food, disappeared. So yeah, did the friend thing, and off we went.
Sounds about right. Anthony, did you stay up late and watch the game? I guess 11 p.m. is late by most people's measures.
I actually didn't stroll in until 20 past 11, which is very unusual for me. So I missed the 2 goals. And then obviously the game had settled in a bit of a rhythm by then, but we'll talk about that in a second. Went and saw a couple of Fringe shows last week at Fringe in Northbridge. So a couple of shows, and currently binging 3 seasons of Happy Valley. So that was some total of my weekend.
I seen I went to the Fringe and saw, what's the guy's name? Is it Ray Bradshaw, the Partick Thistle fan that does it?
I saw him as well, yeah.
There was literally 6 people when I went to see him. It was on whatever weeknight it was. And he was telling us all how he did like a 10,000 person show supporting John Bishop. And then he come to Perth and there was 6 people. So
he was he was trying out some material because obviously he's an upcoming tour through the UK, but he did mention that he'd only been sort of sued or threatened to be sued twice, and one was an ex-Celtic player who may or may not have connections, or father may or may not have connections to the IRA, but I'll leave that one to maybe not figire that one out. Anyway, moving along.
I thought the show was pretty funny, but yeah, let's talk about Celtic. So there was a bit of change to the starting lineup, quite a few changes actually. We'll talk a bit more about the player who made his first start in a moment, but I just want to quickly highlight the midfield 3 that no one could have predicted with this just little video from last Wednesday's show. Adam Moy low-key limped off at the weekend. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Hatate come back in for Turnbull and O'Reilly come in for Moy. So there you go. One person at least predicted the midfield. But what I did not predict was that O would be starting up front. When the press conference came out and Postecoglou said, oh yeah, Kyogo's fit in training, I was like, okay, I guess Kyogo's starting then. And then when it came out that O was starting, I was kind of pleasantly surprised. I didn't feel that Aberdeen were going to take any points off us at all, so I was like, yep, let's see what this guy can do getting his first start. Anthony, how was your reaction when did you see that on your way home?
I saw the starting lineup, so I guess the big one there was obviously starting. So yeah, I didn't have that on my thing either. I thought he'd be sort of brought in, but I guess upon thinking about it, Ange needs to know if he's up to it, because you know a lot can happen a week of training. You've got a cup final next week, or this week coming, obviously. So you need to know if he's capable of starting and leading the line. I thought he did okay. My biggest criticism, probably particularly in the first half, was that he was dropping too deep. So where Kyogo tends to play off the shoulder of the last man, he was coming deeper and deeper and deeper looking for the ball. And yeah, he got involved, I think, in the second goal, the pass to put Hatate through. I think he was involved in that. But I just felt that was probably the one criticism in the first half. He was probably trying a little bit too hard, and that's natural. But the controls there, he was getting amongst it. I think he adjusted in the second half. You saw him, he was playing a bit higher up. And yeah, I mean, like I said, he got in amongst it, but unfortunately, obviously didn't get on the score sheet. But I thought he played okay. It was decent enough performance.
There was some times last season when Kyogo would come in for some sort of pseudo criticism, where he would have like some of the stats would be like, yeah, he's only had 8 touches of the ball in this game, but he scored twice, kind of thing. So it's almost like Ange kind of wants that from the strikers at times. And what you're saying there is, it was a kind of halftime adjustment. So there's obviously been that feedback, which and it's perfectly understandable that he would be very enthusiastic and try and get involved as much as possible. It's not been as obvious in the away games where he's been coming off the bench. Paul, do you think that's a kind of facet of his game that will that would need to fit around home and away games, different opposition? How do you kind of see that working in different situations?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting one. Obviously, unless you are an aficionado of the Korean League, then most of us haven't seen much of him other than a YouTube clips video until he came in to see, to play with us, and obviously is limited at that point. I think he's like Anthony touched on. Obviously, he's been keen to impress. He's got his chance. I think there's a lot of rumors. I was surprised about, but there's a lot of rumors coming out of Celtic, or purported to be coming out of Celtic, that the sports scientist had said he was a fair bit off starting matches and things like that. Now, I don't know if that was actually based on any kind of fact, or that was just the Twitterati giving it their perception. But so I was the same. I wasn't expecting him to start. That reason plus the reason that Ange said he was good to Kyogo was good to go. But look, I think. He's a different player again. I think a lot of us thought, okay, Giakoumakis is going. This guy's like the closest ready-made replacement. He's something different to Kyogo. But to me, in a little bit we've seen of him, he sort of sits somewhere between the two. He's not going to play completely off the last man. He's not a big bruiser centre forward. He's definitely a bit more of a unit than Kyogo, but he's not necessarily just like an out-and-out target man. So I think he's a bit of an all, he's got a bit of everything about him, and he'll take some time. So I've got to remember, he's only 21. He's just arrived. I haven't got the stats on how much he's played in Korea, but at that age, I wouldn't imagine it's a ton of seasons. So even to be hitting the ground running and scoring in his, I think, second appearance off the bench, and then putting a pretty tidy performance together, as it touched on. I actually thought that he was involved in Hatate's first goal, the second goal in the first half, and I thought his play was really good in that little passage of play. He obviously he did come off the front, but in him coming deep, winning the ball, sort of recycling it, pushing it back, he actually vacated the space, which allowed Hatate to come in and effectively play almost what we now call a false nine, and sort of then skip past a couple of defenders with quick feet, which I'm sure we'll spend more time talking about Hatate's feet over the course of the next hour or so. But yeah, I think there's plenty more to come from him. If you think back to the debut against United, he didn't have long, but he put in that fantastic cross from Maguire, so he found himself wide on the right. And it didn't look out of place there. And by all accounts, he's played some off the left a little bit as well in Korea, which is some of the reports that came out before that. So I think we'll see him, certainly, like Giakoumakis would hold his position centrally pretty solidly. He wouldn't veer too far off that. He's textbook penalty box striker, you would say, and the first touch finishes sort of highlight that. But I think there's a lot more to come from Owen. I think that he's he's got the potential, let's call it that. It's very early days in his career, but he's got the potential to be a bit more of an all-round package than maybe somebody like Giakoumakis.
Yeah, so I guess while we're on this subject of Hatate, we should probably focus on him, because obviously he's the one that everyone is going absolutely nuts for at the moment. Dropped after an underperforming against St Johnstone, and then he just absolutely put on a clinic against Aberdeen, and in the 27 minutes or whatever he played against St Mirren, back-to-back doubles. So he's in. Look, they asked Postecoglou post game, and Postecoglou's response was he's been that good all year. Obviously, there was a moment earlier in the season, a few weeks ago, where one stirring Celtic podcast had asked Reo Hatate, is he really that good? And I think Hatate has obviously answered that in the moment. I was trying to come up with some pun-based names, and I don't know if you tried this ChatGPT thing. So I gave it out, and I said, ChatGPT, can I have some potential pun-based titles for Reo Hatate? And there were some really good ones, like Riole entertaining, the Reo'd to success, and my personal favourite was Hatate-tude adjustment. I quite like that one, given some of the comments that have been coming out about him. So hopefully we'll see some of those in the Wednesday show. So who wants to go first to wax lyrical about Reo Hatate and then speculate on just how much money he's going to be worth if he leaves in the summer? Anthony, do I go?
I'll go. Look, I hope he doesn't go, because obviously we're just starting to see he's adding goals to his game. So I think when he first came in January last year, we saw the potential in this guy and what he could do. And then I think obviously he petered out over the rest of the season because of playing a whole season in Japan and then coming to Scotland. So I think he'd been bubbling away, and obviously now he's added two sets of 2 goals in 2 games, one off the bench, and you're thinking, how can you drop this guy? Like he's everywhere. Like he gives you the work rate of Callum McGregor. He plays a forward pass, probably like a Stuart Armstrong. Like really good at breaking the lines. He's brave. He plays balls that other players won't play. Turnbull will tend to go sideways. O'Reilly will tend to go sideways. He tends to play through the lines, and they're the balls that win you or score you goals, and ultimately win you football matches. And like I said, his 2 goals are almost carbon copy-ish in the sense that he both hit the bottom right-hand corner. But that second goal, I haven't seen an individual goal like that in a very long time. I mean, nutmegging, taking on 3 players, getting the return off his own pass. It's pretty special. And I know we talk about goal of the year and all that sort of stuff, but that has got to be up there. I mean, if not team goal of the year, definitely individual goal of the year, because it was incredible. I mean, Aberdeen were pretty hapless, and we'll touch on them as well, but he still had to do it. And I just think if he can bring that form into next week, we'll go a long way into securing the League Cup.
I think it was Rogic-esque, the goal that you're referring to, the third of the
Yes.
night, the second for Hatate. Paul, how did you see it?
Yeah, look, we can talk about the virtues of his performance all day long. He was pretty sensational. Look, he's shown a fair amount of that over the past sort of season and a half, or season, just over a season across the two years. I love his ability to make a pass, both short and long. As Anthony says, between the lines. There was a raking pass second half out to Maeda that I can't remember who dummied it, but somebody dummied it, and it went. It could have gone. That player could have picked it straight up anyway. It was right at his feet, but he had the foresight to dummy it, and I think Maeda picked it up on the far left, and must have been a 40, 50, 60-yard pass, just raking across the pitch. And he's done that quite a bit. He did that in the Champions League. There was 2 or 3 of those in the same match. I think maybe against Real Madrid at home, and he was pinging passes like that, and you just thought, Jesus, this guy's got it. And he's, the only thing you could really level at him is consistency, and it's not consistency as in 1 week he's tremendous and 1 week he's really poor. It's just that he drops off that really high level that he's been at. And I think the other thing that there's a couple of things about Hatate that people seem to sort of have a misconception on. One is he gets called a young player a lot, and he'll be 26 shortly. But I think the reason for him being called a young player is because he's come up through the university system in Japan. So he's very early in his professional career. And I think you've got to look at that balance. Like you can't treat him like another player who's 25 going on 26. He probably is a player that's more like 2021 in terms of his development. So I can see why people refer to that, and it certainly makes sense to do so. I'm the same as Anthony. Obviously, any Celtic fan, unless you're completely stats based and think that therefore Turnbull's a better player, which is clearly nonsense. And we've known that before the weekend's game. Obviously, we don't want him to go. He's on a long contract. If he did go this summer, not that we want to encourage that, but if people keep putting those clip packages together on Twitter, then it's more likely he will. Look, I don't like to speculate because I've been wrong often enough on fees. The last window being a perfect example. I'd have thought both those players would have gone for more money than they did. But yeah, he's a special player, and rather than fees, you could talk about what level he can play at, and I don't think he's got a ceiling, to be honest. At the moment, he's got the capacity to play at whatever level he wants. And to be honest, I think Ange alluded to that in his commentary. He said, he just comes in and wants to be a better player constantly, and that's what he's striving to do, and that's where that he's got the opportunity to do that with up to whatever level he wants to do. So yeah, fantastic performance. The second goal, the shift of feet is like, I don't know, that's incredible. 2 or 3 different shifts, and then he plays a brilliant pass through the legs. And at that point, you could be forgiven that deep in the game to go and sit back and sort of enjoy the bit of skill and the pass. But no, he's herring straight after that ball, and the lay back to him or the flick back to him isn't the best, and it's quite fast at him, and he manages to get that under control immediately and tuck it away. It's just a really good finish. And I think look, I said it last week, I'll say it again. I think he and Matt O'Reilly are our best 2 in those positions. And I stand by that. And I expect those 2 to start, barring any training ground injury in the coming week. But yeah, I think maybe we'll touch on Matt O'Reilly in a bit, but I thought he had a very good game as well, and has probably come in for some undue criticism, and probably only because of the quality of Moy. We've not talked about missing Matt O'Reilly, but I think those three, obviously including McGregor, are the best midfield combo we've got at the minute, and I hope they do play in the cup final.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that point. I think we'll probably leave most of the cup final review to the Wednesday guys, because we focus on what's happened this weekend, but we will touch on it. Just bring up a couple of comments at the moment. We've got, just to highlight something, we've got a morning boys from Northampton Tim, and then an afternoon lads from Paddy Lavery, and I think our response will be good evening.
Good evening.
From 8:15 p.m. here in Western Australia. But thanks for the comments at whatever time zone you're in England or wherever Paddy is. Actually, probably what is about midday in the UK now as well. Mark McDonald's put a comment in, Hatate, the Reo deal, simple as that. Now, I wanted to, when you talked about how many goals Hatate was scoring, it kind of threw up a link for me. So thinking Hatate scored 4 goals in the last week, which puts him on 8 for the season. Top scorer is obviously Kyogo on 22, so he's not significantly far behind that. You've got Jota and Maeda on 9 goals. Giakoumakis was on 9 when he left. But the only other player, apart from Kyogo and Maeda and Jota, who scored more goals than Hatate, is the player that scored the final goal this weekend, Leo Labada. Now, Leo Labada is a curiosity. He has played every single league game this season without fail, mostly off the bench, but he's played every game. He's somehow played more games than Joe Hart. The only other person who has played as many games as Leo Labada is Matt O'Reilly, another curiosity, and possible product of the 5 sub rule. But Leo Labada is our second top goal scorer. Can you tell me how many goals Leo Labada has scored this season?
11?
12?
It's exactly 11. Yeah, but you're both pretty on the money there with those guesses.
It was a complete guess, but yeah, that was in that ballpark.
So yeah, Leo Labada, 11 goals. Is he hard done by to be out the team behind Jota and Maeda? Should he be in ahead of Jota? What's going on with those two? What's this contest going on with the wingers? Is Haksabanovic too good to be going on the wing? Anthony, wingers, let's go.
Yeah, it's a conundrum. I've been thinking about this. Obviously, talking points, and Abada for me just seems to pop up and score goals. And he's a bit like Hyogo. Like, he might not do too much the rest of the game, but all of a sudden he's in the right position at the right time. And more often than not, it's in the back of the net. Like, he absolutely creamed that shot. That was a good finish. And that was like, that's not an easy thing to do. And he absolutely buried it. Keeper had no chance. So, and he should have scored last week. I mean, there was a handball, obviously. So, I mean, he's probably robbed the goal there as well. But how does he fit in? Well, Maeda's obviously in the form of his career at the moment. He's playing out on the left. He can't really play on the right. So then that's forcing Jota on the right. Is Jota the best player on the right? I think that's questionable. It's unfortunate that we've got 2 really good players who both play left wing. And then, like I said, Jota just terrorizes Barisic every time he plays against him. So I don't know whether I predict squads and things for the game on the weekend, but I'd be very tempted to start him on the right, because he just goes past Barisic. He's done it so many times already. Like, Barisic will be having nightmares if he starts. But I think you could easily turn and say, well, Maeda and Jota are Ange's go-to starting 11 wingers, and you couldn't really argue with that either. Because Jota had a reasonable game. He's probably a bit unlucky, drifted offside for the shot, and then that could have been a penalty, but it obviously was called back for offside from the VAR. So yeah, he was involved in the header for the first goal as well. So he was in amongst it. He looked up for it. Maeda gives you that work rate, and like I said, thought he'd won a penalty. Obviously, it was chalked off, but so it's a hard one. Leo Labada is probably not hard done by. The one thing I would say is that Leo Labada was overplayed last season, because he did have a bit of a barren patch last season, but because we didn't have the squad and the numbers, he kept getting games when probably he would have been rotated out. So I think that's a little bit to do with it. But I dare say, based on minutes, surely he has the best return for goals and assists per minute of any Celtic player. I didn't have a chance to look that up today, but I reckon he must be top of the pecking order.
I'm trying to pull up the stats as you went to pause talking there to find out how close he is to playing 100 games and what his stats are. But he was played 50-something games last year, and he's on 36 this year. So I'd say there's a realistic chance that he could be hitting 100 games for Celtic before the end of the season. And when you look at Callum McGregor, who's 29 or 28, whatever now, and he's just hit 400, and Leo Abada's somehow managed to rack up a quarter of that in 1.5-2 seasons, right? It's quite interesting. I think sometimes people get frustrated with Abada, myself in particular, because when he's kind of stood up face to face, like facing up to a packed box full of defenders, he doesn't seem to quite know what to do in those moments. Whereas when he kind of gets a run on, sees some space, gets some instinct, he can kind of do it. But what do you think, Paul? Is there an argument that Jota is a better choice against a low block than Leo Abada, and that maybe Abada's better coming on when a defence is stretched? And how do you think that applies to selection between those two for the cup final this Sunday?
Yeah, look, it's a good point. I think we touched on this last week, or I certainly mentioned that we with Abada's impact, with obviously the pass down the side to Moy, and then the collection and shot for the penalty and the red card, but that was all he did, and that's quite often what he's like. I think I touched on Fitba Tweets on Twitter last week. He's a cartoon. They draw him as a ghost because he just ghosts in at the back post. He's very good at coming off his wing and into the box and taking up that central position as everyone gets drifted to the front post. So yeah, and his pace and his movement play well to a team that's sitting a little bit higher. Look, on Jota, and Michael's just said that Jota frustrates him. He's not consistent enough. I take that point, but also when you've got a player that's like Jota, that's a traditional winger whose job is to take people on, to produce a piece of skill, to take risks and to commit players, even the very best of those aren't 100% consistent in terms of beating a man every time, a positive output. But I thought his performance for the period he was on the pitch, particularly the first half, was excellent. We talk about Maeda's work rate. I thought Jota's work rate in the first half was tremendous. There's more than once he was tracking back into the fullback position and robbing balls off attacking players who just weren't expecting him to be tracking back to that degree. And obviously with the way that we played, Johnston wasn't naturally right there in the fullback position because he tucked up as well. And Jota tracked his man all the way back into that position, and a mixture of pace and willingness was the first one to win those balls as they were getting slid in the channels. And look, he terrorised the Aberdeen defence as well. Johnny Hayes had a nightmare until either Maguire switched over or they changed the formation in the second half. And once they changed the formation and they tightened up to 4-5-1, there was a bit less space in the wings and in the midfield in general. And it did take us a little bit of time to break them down. And I guess if they'd started that formation, then the game might have been a little bit more frustrating. But as it was, we got more space than we might have imagined we did. And yeah, Robson responded at half time, but it was obviously a little bit too late at that point. But yeah, I thought Jota had a tremendous game for the period he was on, particularly first half. And look, it's probably mentioned elsewhere, but it was 2-0 going on about 5-0. First half, it should have been out of sight by half time. There was a few flashed across the 6-yard box. Both Maeda and Jota played balls into that area, and if I've got one criticism of it, that he wasn't because he was looking to play a little bit deeper and link play. He wasn't the first man in the box to slot some of those coming across the box, which you often see Kyogo getting on the end of stuff 1 or 2 yards out. So, along with somebody like Abada who go and even Jota sometimes if he's coming in on the other side. So yeah, look, be interesting to see. To me, I'd go Maeda and Jota on the cup final, but there's absolutely a case for Abada given his record, particularly against Barisic, which we've touched on, and it's a common theme. But look, I think let Jota loose and sort of run at them, and just give them the freedom to do that and see how we go. And the bench is so strong that Abada will get time at some point if it's needed, and he'll get a crack at that point. And coming on against a Tyrant defence, I think arguably both him and somebody like Maeda can cause mayhem, because their speed and work rate is phenomenal.
There's some incisive comments from the listeners. So Mark McDonald, Abada better when Ralston plays, in his opinion. Northampton Tim, and he loves to play the Huns, which we all know. I believe he's scored more goals against Sevco in the last year than anyone else. And Mahesh has answered your stats question, Anthony. Assists and goals per 90 minutes, Abada 0.76, Jota 71, and Maeda 40.46. So stats says Abada should be in first. And I did find that number. Abada has played 90 games for Celtic since he signed last in summer of 21. So if he keeps playing every league game like he has been, then he will reach 100 before the end of the season. So he'll be getting his jersey presented on the pitch and all that sort of stuff. On what you mentioned there, Paul, about how absolutely dominant we were in the first half, and really it speaks to the kind of overall dominance we had of the game, where we finished the whole game overall. We had 78% possession. Aberdeen didn't have an attempt on or off target in the first half. Callum McGregor finishes with 102 completed passes, while Aberdeen finished with 151. So it was pretty comprehensive in that sense. It seemed to me that the only kind of moments of glimmers of hope that came for Aberdeen was from two kind of shaky moments from Joe Hart. I don't know if you remember those in much detail, but what did you make of those two? And did you think there was a handball offence? The ball clearly hits his hand, but what did you make of that as a handball offence, Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, Aberdeen didn't offer much. I mean, they played two up front the first half, but they were pretty quick to concede territory, and the first two goals went in before they realised they were in a game. Like they're pretty lackadaisical, shutting Celtic down, and Celtic's had a field day. So I think it took 15 minutes for Aberdeen to wake up and realise they were in a game, and then they sort of obviously tried to be a bit harder after that, and then they tried to shut up shop in the second half. And you're right, they were really the only two chances. The one where Joe Hart plays the ball out, tries to play the ball out to Johnson, I think, and totally just doesn't hit it hard enough, and they intercepted it with Johnny Hayes. And then that was sort of a half chance. And then the other one, I think, wasn't that a Carl Starfelt horrible back pass? I mean, as much as everyone's blaming Joe Hart, I mean, the ball he got a horrible back pass. Like, it was lobbed in at pace. I don't know what Carl Starfelt was doing. Well, he just put it rose ed. Like, I don't know. Like, if you can't play it on the ground back to the keeper, it should, for me, it goes out. But he's played that horrible back pass. Joe Hart's caught in no man's land because he's not in his box. He's probably too close. So then it's like he's jockeying in the 30 yards from his goal. And yeah, I must admit, I thought, well, that did hit his hand. But then what is that? Would it be a yellow card and a free kick? I mean, that's probably all it would be. But yeah, it was just a moment of madness in general. And it probably was like the only thing that you sort of say, oh, that was probably Aberdeen's one chance. And Johnny Hayes didn't even hit the target. So it was just, I wouldn't get too hung up on it, but I mean, I thought the defense played really well. They did what they had to do. But I think when there's not much to do and Joe Hart hasn't got anything to do, then you do tend to fixate on these moments. And I guess, like you say, you just don't want to have all these moments next weekend. It could be costly. And I think we said the same about Starfelt last week. So it's just, I'd much rather make a boo-boo like that at 2-3-0 when we're absolutely cruising at home than in a cup final. But it's one of those things.
Does it give you any fear for Sunday, Paul? Assuming that Joe Hart's going to be starting and not Siegrist coming back in?
We've not even seen Siegrist on the bench for a few weeks, so I'd be very surprised to see him starting. No, look, it's not ideal, but I think we touched on last week that the centre backs and the keeper at Celtic aren't actually domestically asked to do that much defending, so it is more about concentration and being alert and sharp. And yeah, he's made as Anthony said, I think there's less blame to be laid at his door for the back pass one, but the other one is just I guess it's a symptom of what Ange is asking from him, which we've all aware that was definitely not his natural game, is to play out and be comfortable at the ball. And I think we can all say that he's made there's been a marked progression in his ability with his feet in the time he's been at Celtic, which I think's to be commended, a player of his experience and age. So proving you maybe can teach old dogs new tricks. But yeah, he's left a little bit on there. It's a pitiful effort by Hayes, to be honest. I saw something on Twitter today that said we should have kept him, and that was the clip. So yeah, probably not. Yeah, look, I've got no concerns with Hart. Look, I think long term for Ange's system, assuming we've got to keep Ange for the foreseeable, he's obviously not the absolute perfect keeper for that system, but his presence, his experience, his leadership, I think all outweigh the odd mistake like that. And look, he's not I don't think he's. If you're going to criticize him, yes, a little bit of distribution, and his for a big lad, his under a cross ball, he gives me a little bit I feel like his ability to punch doesn't really get the distance as you would want, but generally he's still a sharp shot stopper. He organises his defence well, and yeah, he's a proper leader both out of the pitch and in the dressing room. So yeah, I don't think there's any danger that he'll be getting replaced anytime soon. I think it's one probably for review come the close season. But yeah, I don't think Siegrist is a long-term solution. I think he's a backup, and I think Toby is a bit away from what we can gather. So maybe we'll see how he goes in this loan spell. That might be the making of him, like some other young players. But historically, goalkeepers take a lot longer to come to their peak. So I would say there'll be another purchased keeper that becomes a first choice before anyone inside the club already.
Seems likely. And Molnick, I wouldn't be dropping him or anything, but one of my only other concerns about Joe Hart and goals in the cup final is that he's self-proclaimed not very good at saving penalties. And there's obviously a good chance that a cup final can go to penalties at some point. So I would have maybe liked to have seen Siegrist in for that reason, but given that he's not been fit, I think you have to go with Hart. It's jumping ahead a little bit, but just absolutely well within the subject area of talking about Joe Hart getting caught out. Did you see Australian goalkeeper Mark Birigitti's concession of 3 points for Dundee United? And what did you make of? Do you think he was to blame or Charlie Mulgrew? So if you haven't seen it, what happens is Dundee United just scored a sensational equaliser. 60 seconds later, Charlie Mulgrew plays the most ridiculous back pass to Berigitti, who then also inexplicably just absolutely dwells on the ball instead of getting rid of it. And Stevie May just slide tackles in and 2 yards out, straight into the net. And Birigitti goes off injured in a Dida type incident. Anthony, did you see it? What did you think? Who was to blame, Birigitti or Mulgrew?
Oh, it's just terrible football. The keeper passes it to Charlie Mulgrew's right foot, and Charlie Mulgrew's left-footed, and then he just plays a weak back pass, but a pass back to him. So, I mean, you would think the keeper should be putting that into row Z at that point. Doesn't, tries to take a touch, and then totally just thinks he's got a lot more time than he thought he did. I thought he was pretty weak for the first goal as well. Like, the shot was going down the middle of the goal, and there was a bit of criticism of him for that as well. And I know we'll touch on this, but Motherwell, having 2 wins, and I sort of basically gave them the death knell last week. I think my caveat to that was that if another team doesn't shoot themselves in the foot, and I think that qualifies as shooting yourself in the foot when you go one each and you're on the ascendancy, and then your keeper does that. Your keeper and your main centre half does that. I think it's going to be a real tough grind. And I mean, Kilmarnock, they lost as well, so they're in the mire as well, along with Ross County. But tell you what, you don't need that if you're trying to climb yourself off the bottom of the ladder. I think it's those sorts of moments of madness that will lead you to be relegated. So
Dundee United are sitting on the bottom of the table after that, and I'm not sure. I think they would have climbed off up ahead of Kilmarnock if they'd managed to get that draw. And
there's 2 really big sets of fixtures this weekend at the bottom of the table. Killie hosts Motherwell and Ross County hosts Dundee United. So those are 2 massive games for the context of who's going to finish in the bottom 2 positions in the league. Motherwell, 2 wins, beat St Mirren, and then they beat St Mirren 2-1, and then beating Hearts on Sunday night 2-0, which is definitely a bit of an upset. So I'll just say a couple of things on that, because obviously, like I said, I gave Motherwell the the kiss of death last week, but
give them the kiss of life, Anthony.
Kiss of life, possibly. Stuart Kettlewell, aka David De Gea, he has seemingly revitalised Motherwell squad in the space of 7 days, so fair play. And I think he might be on if he gets another result on the weekend, I reckon he could get the job full time. I think St Mirren put all their effort and energies into playing Celtic. So I think it's quite often that you do see teams that play Celtic tend to suffer a poor performance after that. So I think Motherwell were probably slightly beneficiaries of that as well. And then the other statistic out of that game, which was quite interesting, was that there was actually more players for St Mirren who've played more minutes for Motherwell than Motherwell's team has played for Motherwell. Mm-hmm. So maybe part of the thing is that Motherwell should just play themselves and they'll get a result every week. And then as for the game on the weekend against Hearts, maybe Robbie Nielsen's men thought they were playing Rangers. I mean, that's maybe the explanation for that one.
I do often wonder about that. Teams do seem to, after we give them a good scalp on the arse, they do seem to kind of have a bit of a hangover in the next game. And I always wonder if that's physical fatigue or some sort of mental, just
probably both.
Both. Like we've just been. Are we actually good at football? Doesn't seem like it. These guys are playing a different game to us almost. Like Celtic in their last 7 games were averaging 3.9 goals per game. So if we'd had like one more goal in that spell, we'd be on exactly 4 goals per game. So we are absolutely flying in terms of goals scored. But I do wonder, like, are we, like, is it hubris here for us to say that we're having that much effect in every team we come up against and put to the sword? Or,
Well, I think teams treat it as a bit of a cup final. They go, we're playing Celtic this week, we need to be up for this, otherwise we're going to get scalped. So they put a lot of mental energy in, and like St Mirren, they put a lot of physical energy into that game. Like, they left nothing on the park. So we did talk about that last week. And in fairness, last week was a cup fixture, so it was all there to play for. So, I think that translates into, especially because we're playing midweek, and they don't have a big squad either. So I think that definitely translates into a midweek game. If you're playing sort of back-to-back sort of thing. So I think in this instance, it definitely had an impact. Aberdeen, on the other hand, I don't think they really tried much for a leg, to be honest. So it wouldn't really surprise me if they get a result against Livingston this weekend. But I didn't see a lot there that really, Barry Robson sort of, he's been dealt a tough hand there. I just think they're just trying to see out the season and avoid that sort of bottom 4 stramash and just sort of sit mid-table security, and that'll be that, and start again in the summer, I guess. But it was pretty. I didn't see anything there that made me think, they're the signs of life there. So,
yeah, and St Mirren did win it again at the weekend after they won 1-0, despite losing to Motherwell. But you're right. That's after Motherwell. What was it? 9 wins in a year. Then they appoint a new manager, and they've got two wins out of 2. Hopefully, that's not them making another run for Europe, because that was embarrassing at the start of this season. But also, Partick Thistle, who sacked their manager last week, beat Ayr United, who are chasing promotion, 1-0 at the weekend. So, and this is the thing that sometimes the stats go against us, and sometimes they absolutely support it. So this is kind of anecdotal, but it does seem like this, getting rid of the manager, getting literally anyone in, because Partick Thistle have got Chris Doolan in, who's no previous experience as a manager. He's just the man that's standing at the end of the corridor when they're trying to find someone to take the sessions, and both teams have won. So this kind of dead cat bounce you get from a new manager, is it a real thing? Is Sevco currently going through one? Paul, what do you think? Is it real, the new manager bounce?
Well, I think in a lot of cases it's just somebody different. It's a different voice on the training ground. It's a different voice in the changing room. If a manager's got to the point where they've lost a job, things are probably going pretty badly. So that's been felt all around the place. I think it's as simple as that. Maybe as well, there's a bit of a wake-up call for some players that go, well, hang on, that guy hired me. If I don't impress whoever's next, I might be out of my ear. And we've got to remember that it's a bit of a cliche, but football's a short career, and outside of your bigger teams, especially bigger teams in Scotland, the wages aren't going to set you up for life. So, you're going to need another job after you finish playing the game. And some guys drop out of the game before they, because there's nobody wants them at the level that they can afford to continue to be professional at. So I think there's multiple factors to it. Just on where the league's sitting at the moment, there's a few interesting things going on at the minute. Aberdeen could just as easily end up in the top 6 quite comfortably. There's, from about 5th to about 9th, there's very little across that. And I did look at it earlier, but I haven't got the stats immediately to hand, but there's not many points spreading across the bulk of that midsection of the league. And the other one I thought was really interesting is the perception of our friends in Edinburgh, because Hearts are perceived to be having a great season, solidly in 3rd place. Meanwhile, Hibs are deemed to be having an absolute shocker of a season. And there's 5 points between them. And Hearts have won 12 matches and Hibs have won 11. When I checked that today, I was surprised, because that's definitely the messaging and the perception around the place. But it's sort of, to the point where we're speaking about managers, it sort of maybe plays into the fact that, you can't necessarily hang on to a manager just for the sake of it, but that stability and backing of the manager that's happened with Hibs, it seems like they might get some reward out of that, because maybe it's just because it's been one of those seasons where, other than the top 2, nobody's really been able to put a string of results together, and the league is pretty wide open. Even United, as hapless as they've been, they're not dead and buried. You can, Motherwell actually look like another win, and they're out of that little trouble for now. So I think they're 6 points clear of bottom after
right.
2 wins. So
right, yeah.
so it just shows you how quickly you can move in this league if you string 2 or 3 results together. So from a personal point of view, I think we'd all like to see the back of Kelly or Livingston or both, if we can help it, to get rid of those plastic pitches. Not being biased, but we hate them. So yeah, I'd like to see United dig themselves out of it. Obviously, they're one of the traditionally big clubs as well. But yeah, I agree. They're looking at a bit of a shambles at the moment, and they've made some funny choices. We touched on it last week with letting Tony Watt go to a competitor in the same half of potentially the same half of the league. That's are doing well, and they could well finish in the top 6 as well. But yeah, it's a pretty aside from the top 2 and even us, you pretty much we don't want to count our chickens, but we're 9 points clear, and we'd need to drop a ridiculous amount of points in not very many games for it to become a possibility. So really, outside, if one's clear, second's pretty clear, and after that, from 3rd to, I don't know, the majority of the league, you could nearly throw a rug over them and string a few results in one direction or the other, and you could have a fair amount of movement across the league.
You're right, and there's 7 games to the split, so there's going to be quite a lot of chopping and changing in there. And yeah, I agree with you that I hate plastic pitches for top flight football, but then Michael Beale came out and said he didn't like them, so now I like them, whereas I didn't before. So I've changed my mind on that one. But we'll talk about SEFCO in a minute. I don't want to move on from Hibs yet. So Hibs are up to 4th, and I think since Aidan McGeady effectively missed the first half of the season through injury, and since he's came back, I think Hibs have been a different animal. He's basically getting an assist every week and really running these games, and he had another good performance at the weekend. But I actually thought a bigger talking point from that game was the red card for Kyle Vassell. And I'm sure a lot of people didn't actually see it. So I just did a fair use policy, definitely not plagiarizing or stealing anything from the internet clip. Hold on, I'll just play it now. So for anyone that's audio only, obviously that was a sensational experience for you. But what's happened is Kyle Vassell has put his 6 foot in the air, studs into the boy's face, didn't get the ball, and John Beaton's given a yellow card, and then VAR calls him over, and then they change it to a red. Now, what I found most astonishing about that was the first take I heard on it was Derek McInnes, the Kilmarnock manager, coming out and saying how angry he was it was even a yellow. And I'm thinking to myself, when I watched that, I'm like, what? And I'm thinking of the David Turnbull red card, and I'm like, how is that
That's
different?
what I was thinking. If that David Turnbull one was a red card, that's a red card. I mean, if you're going for consistency, which is what we're asking for, then it's a red. I mean, you can't stick your boot that high up in the air. A little bit of sympathy, the fact that the Hibs boys coming in, full-bodied, but you just can't do it. In today's game, if you lift your foot up that high and you catch them, you don't get the ball, you're giving the referee a dangerous, decision to make for dangerous play. So it's a red card.
If he makes no connection with the player's face, that's a yellow, right? But he's caught him studs in the face. And the only thing that I think that's stopped him from getting a straight red in the first place is the Hibs player is almost shrugged it off. Like he's just kind of tilting his head and like holding his face. Like, and I mean, see the replay, like if that was a Spanish player, I don't want to be like racist or anything, but if it was an overseas player with a different culture,
if it was Neymar, yes,
if it was Neymar, then he'd been down on the ground like doing 5.5 rolls. It was a pretty rough challenge. Paul, was it shocking? Is that the first time you've seen it? Were you shocked?
This is the first time I've seen it, and look, I'm gonna play devil's advocate, and I've got a little bit of sympathy for the guy that's got sent off there. So I would, I take the point Anthony's making about the Turnbull challenge. I say the difference with that is Turnbull's flying in with the goalkeeper kind of already there, and his boot is high, and he's got to realise that there's a pretty good chance that's going to connect, because that's where the keeper standing right between his posts, and that's where he should be. I think in this one, you can see the player's eyes are firmly on the ball. He's gone to try and make contact with the ball, and the Hibs player has come, to me, he's come flying in to win a header. And okay, he's, it's marginal. He probably does just make it. And obviously there's a coming together. I think you can go either way on that in terms of, if with VAR, you slow it down, he studs the face, you're going to get a red on decision. But I think if that had stayed as a yellow, I wouldn't have had too much complaint about it in the middle of the pitch where the ball's there to be contested. The player's eyes are firmly on the ball. Yeah, I'm going to play devil's advocate and say it's a man's game. And
Paul,
you put your head. Come on. You put your head in where.
Okay, Graham Souness.
Look, I'm not like. Look, modern game. Yeah, fair enough. You take a red card.
Well,
I think I don't think it's as black and white and as similar to the Turnbull one, to be honest.
If you want to compare that to Barry Robson's elbow of Christian Daly in his first Glasgow derby. That's going back to when men were men, and it
that should have been a straight red. That should have been a straight red
card. That set the tone for that game.
Today, that would be a straight red all day long, particularly if it's a Celtic player flying into a Rangers player that early in the match. But look, and I think the ref was a bit guilty of this on Saturday as well. Refs are still loath to bring out the cards early doors in a game, right? So they don't want to set the tone that cards are coming out, but the danger of that is then players get emboldened to just keep sticking the boot in. We saw it a little bit with St Mirren, and we saw it. There was multiple times. I can't remember the Aberdeen player who had probably 3, possibly 4 fouls in the first half in quick succession, and it annoys me that I've forgotten who that was, but. Obviously, the Celtic TV team were quick to point out that it was multiple fouls, and look, none of them in their own right. Maybe the third one was probably a yellow in its own right, but the other 2 were just fouls. But by the time you get taught up and persistent fouling, I think there was definitely an element for a card there. But yeah, I think that's the thing. Look, certainly in a big game like back then. They don't want to. I don't think he even got a yellow for that from memory. They don't want to pull the cards out. I think you'll see the cards stay in the pocket for a good chunk of the game on Sunday. But I wouldn't be surprised to see a bit of a controversial decision via VAR in that match. But we'll just have to hope that we're too far ahead that that's not going to cause an issue by that point.
I reckon the only way you get a yellow card in the first hour is if it's like a pullback. I think I from memory in every game for the last however many years, the only time you get a yellow card in the first hour is if it's a deliberate foul, like a pulling a player back or impeding progress when someone's on a counter attack. I cannot think of a yellow card for anything else in the last few years. It seems like that's the kind of way that refs run this now. Is like, don't give a yellow card unless it's super unavoidable, and that's and you're right. That's shouldn't be that. It should be every offense should be equal no matter when it happens in a game. And if you're committing 4 offenses in the first half, you should be getting a yellow. Mark McDonald saying it's shinny. Probably. It's always shinny, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. He's absolutely right. It was. Well done, Mark. It was shinny. And I think his third challenge maybe was a slight pull as well, which is why I thought it should have been a yellow and it wasn't. But
Yeah, and Adam Jota got a yellow card for it like 2 weeks ago. I can't remember which game it was, but he got a yellow card for persistent fouling in the first half as well.
And they were all innocuous. They were all innocuous. It was just an excuse to give him a yellow.
Yeah, so consistency, as Anthony was mentioning, is what we're looking for, and really it's not what we're getting. And this week they're coming out and saying it's interpretation of rules that's the problem, not VAR. And I'm like, come on, man, like it's monkeys with knives, isn't it? So I'll just quickly brush over. We've still got a couple more talking points.
John, while we're talking about fouls or soft fouls and yellow cards, I think it'd be maybe remiss to talk about our arch rivals and the rather soft red card.
Yeah, that was my next talking point. I was just going to quickly bring up just a quick 20-second laugh at Hearts, who subbed off 4 players and only subbed on 3. Haha. And they're 2-0 lost to Motherwell. If you can't count, that's a bad start. And then we had Sevco, who kicked off at the same time as us in quite a rare event, who, as you say, had a penalty. I personally thought it was a penalty.
It was a pen.
It was pretty blatant, and there's no need for the defender to do it. But then the red card for a second yellow, that was a disgrace. I thought Kamarov is taking an absolute dive there. Like the contact, he's taking 2 steps after the contact, then hit the deck because his legs are tired or whatever. And then Sevco score from the free kick and go 2-0 up, and it's game over. And at 1-0, Livingston were the team creating, well, both teams were creating chances, but Livingston were having chances. So is it a case of, referees assisting them again? I believe it was David Dickinson, I think. I can't remember off the top of my head. Anthony?
It was.
It was soft. I think that's the words I would use. It also looked like Disney on ice because they're all skating about that plastic part, so nobody could stay on their feet anyway. So I think the referee probably should have kept that in consideration with the amount of players falling over. Shot pulling, it was a stupid thing to do, and letter of the law, it is a penalty. But I mean, how many times do you see shots getting pulled at corner kicks and they don't get pulled up? But this one does get pulled up, and it's get awarded a penalty. Even the man sent off, is that Menga? Is that
Omiyonga
sent off? Omiyonga, sorry. His first yellow was soft as well. Like both these yellow cards were pretty soft. So it's consistency. It's like, would a Celtic get those results? I don't know. I just did a bit of statistics today, and not trying to be conspiracy theory tin hat or anything like the tinfoil hat or anything, but Rangers have a +7 penalty differential in the league, still haven't conceded one, and they have a +4 red card count as well. So that means that red cards for and against, they're up 4 in the sense that they've played against 10 men 4 times. For comparison, Celtic are -2 on the penalty count and 0 for the red card count. Hearts are +4 and -3, and Hibs are -4 and +7. So Rangers are the only team benefiting in both penalties and red cards for the league. So read into that whatever you want.
I've been doing some research on that I've not quite finalised yet, but it doesn't look good. Even longer term than this season. What happens to referees when they? So basically, if you go back and look at it, anytime Sevco drop points, and in the same game they've had a penalty against them or a red card against them, that referee disappears from Rangers games for like however long. Like they get taken off those games for like up to a year. I don't know if you remember the Willie Collum one. So anytime Sevco lose, draw, or get knocked out of cup, and there's been a penalty or a red card against them, that ref gets canned from Sevco games for the following foreseeable. So you can check it out. The numbers are there. I'm just trying to crunch the number. I've done all the numbers. I'm just trying to get the stats for the other teams to compare it, just to figure out if it's just one team that's getting this benefit or not. Mahesh's got a couple of comments on it. Saying that grappling of players running past should be professional foul and yellow. Actually, on the shirt pull, right? I think what we're saying a lot of the times to get away with that, I think the fact that he was holding on to that shirt for so long, it was almost like he had 2 goes at it. That was part of the reason why it was given. I think if he lets go after the first time that Morelos is moving away from him, he probably gets away with it. But it's like he's pulled him through 2 motions from Morelos, so that's kind of what's happened there. And then Mahesh, up until the red, Rangers found it hard to get consistent momentum. Cantwell looks like a threat on the right for Rangers. Cantwell got subbed at half-time on the midweek game was it midweek? Sorry, not midweek, the previous game. And so I think that's another one of those inconsistent players. So we're almost at the end. So I'm going to just touch on our other news. So let's talk first about some big positive news for Australian football. The Matildas beat Spain, who are a really big team in ladies football, 3-1 in the Cup of Nations. And to give that a little bit of context, Spain actually beat Australia 7-0 last June. So 3-1 win for the Matildas. Did either of you see that game? Any comments on it?
I saw some of the goals. The goal from Courtney Vine was an absolute belter. So definitely suggest that you watch the highlights of the game just to see that goal, because that would be a goal worthy of winning any match. Spain are actually sitting 7th in the world, so the Matildas are sitting 12th. So that's actually a really, really good win and a good warm-up for the Women's World Cup, which starts on July 20th. Matildas also beat, you say this right, Czechia, the Czech Republic. They're now known as Czechia, if I've pronounced that right. So they beat them 4-0. They're number 28th in the world, and they're also playing Jamaica in a couple of days' time. So it's part of their camp as a pre-World Cup to sort of get up to speed. And just the other thing to say about that is Sam Kerr getting snubbed for World Player of the Year again. Bit of geography, I think, involved in that. It's if anything, hopefully we'll just fire her up for this World Cup and just show everybody that she is one of the world's best players.
Women's football in Spain has this sensational supporter base. I don't know where it came from, but it's amazing. I think they had like 90,000 or 85,000 maybe for the Barcelona Real Madrid last year between the women. Crazy. So to get, and I know some of the Spanish players are boycotting the national team manager, but even still, there's still a lot of really big players in there that are playing for those really big teams. So World Cup coming up. It's in Australia, June, right?
July.
Yeah. Then we've got some games in Perth here, a lot of games out east. Are you saying we should be hopeful that Australia could possibly go away?
Well, I'd
be in the mix.
Definitely. I mean, having that home, the benefit of playing at home, I think definitely is an advantage in a World Cup setting. So you never know. We'll see what happens.
I believe we're playing Ireland in the groups, and I don't remember who else. So
that's our first game, and that's been moved to
that's right. To sell more tickets.
Homebush. So where Celtic played Everton. So because they've reckoned they've sold about 85,000 tickets. So should be.
Is that what it holds?
I think it holds 85, 90.
I think it holds 80-ish. So so it was they done well to fill that because us and Everton couldn't. It was both ends were busy, but the sides were a bit empty. I didn't see the whole game. I saw a couple of goals. I didn't see the one that he's talking about, so I do need to go back and see that. But saw the header from the centre back, and forgive me, but her name escapes me. But I did read a stat that she scored 6 goals in the last 6 games, and prior to that, I don't think had scored in something like 20 odd games. So clearly hitting form at the right time. And look. I think I shared on the group chat that the Matildas have just moved into the 4th most supported side in Australian sport, and pressing the Socceroos for 3rd. So, and gone past I think was it the Wallabies they've gone past. So, and already past the Kangaroos in the NRL. So, it's an exciting time for women's football, and it's great for us to be hosting it. And we've the most games here in Perth, but I think they'll hopefully get a decent turnout for those matches that are here.
Yep, I'm buzzing for it myself. Hopefully getting along, seeing as many games as possible. Final point, just a quick laugh at Chelsea, aka London Rangers, who lost 1-0. Struggling despite spending £600 million in January, lost to Southampton at the weekend. I think that puts them, the 11th or 12th in the EPL Cash League. Just a quick laugh at them. Any comments?
Look, from my point of view, it's obviously great to see them down there. But it just, to me, it doesn't seem like there's any strategy there, right? So the new owners have come in, they've retained the old coach, but then they've just opened the checkbook, as far as I can see, and brought in vast array of players not necessarily with it. Like if you compare it, obviously the budgets are night and day, but you compare it to what somebody like Ange has done, systematically picked players that suit his system, pick people that suit his ethos. And yeah, got a lot of people in the door early, but they all sort of had a place to fit in that squad. And as we've seen the evolution, some of them were only ever intended to get a job done for a period, and then there's time to fill in the gaps. It just feels like he's literally taken a few paint pots and flung them against the wall and hope that, a Jackson Pollock comes out, because and instead it looks a bit like a 5-year-old's playtime picture. I've no idea what's going on there. Potter looks out of his depth, which is weird because he did such a good job at Brighton, with a completely different strategy, actually. But it's proper scouting, finding players under the radar, and putting a systematic squad together that fitted the style of play that he wanted to play, and that seems to have gone out the window entirely. So, whilst it's not a sad situation to see Chelsea struggling, it does disappoint me in a way, because there's some great, I really thought Mudryk was going to go to Arsenal, and it'd be nice to see the Gunners win that league over some of those others, and I felt like he could be part of that jigsaw that sort of pushed them over the line, given how sort of explosive he was in the games against us, but then he's gone to Chelsea and he looked like he can't even dribble in a straight line or string a pass together. So, and he's not the only player like that, where they've looked really good at their previous club and they've gone to Chelsea and they look like a fish out of water. So it's a shame to see, and they stockpile young players and all that. I think it's a shame. What I'm saying, it's a shame that those good players haven't ended up somewhere else where they can be more utilized and produce the football that they're capable of playing. But yeah, I won't have any sympathy for Chelsea. Can't stand them. So yeah,
no, we're not.
Yeah, I've no idea what. Yeah, and also you throw that amount of money at it and you fail. There's a lot to be pleased about that. But yeah, it's a very weird one. I can't imagine Potter will last much longer. But then who comes in? Who wants it? Somebody that wants a fat check.
Anthony?
I was going to say, Graham Potter came out and said that it's the hardest job in football, managing Chelsea. And I'm like, mate, what are you on about? That's like Michael Beale-esque level of stupid things to say at a press conference. So his days are numbered. And if you go on Twitter and Google his name, every single tweet is, get him out, he's done. I know Twitter's not representative of the whole supporter base, but it was 100 out of 10 out of 10 tweets. First 10 I read were all get him out, he's finished, he doesn't know what he's doing, he's out his depth, sack him. So I just think it's only a matter of time, because he's not as if he's not been backed, is it? I mean, far out.
Yeah, I think Chelsea and Sevco and all of the conservative politicians in the world are all in the mindset that rules and regulations are just for poor people, and they're just going to take a wee on any financial fair play regulations. So we'll just keep our mind on our own matters and let them do what they want to do and laugh when they fail. Okay, so just wrapping up now, because we are over an hour. Any final thoughts, recommendations, Netflix, books, music? Paul, anything to see us out and get us through? Oh, actually, sorry, I should mention our new show launches tomorrow, our first Tuesday show, and we'll have still our usual Wednesday show. So there'll be extra Celtic Down Under to get you through the week, but we still need to get through Thursday and Friday. So Paul, what have you got?
Well, it's not so much a recommendation. I just thought it was nicely unplanned but coordinated that we've all got away kits on and nobody's clashed, so there was no awkward oh, you wore the same outfit as me. We should have coordinated that better. So that was one. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, I'm off to Brisbane this week with work. And it's I'm going to enjoy a beer on Thursday night after the conference, because I haven't had a beer this year. So 51 days and counting. So yeah, I'll doing a little meeting an old mate from London who now lives in Brisbane, and checking out a few local breweries in Brisbane on Thursday evening. So that will be my tip. If you're in Australia, check out Range Brewing if you like your craft beer. Some excellent beers.
That's in Brisbane.
Well, Range have got a tap room in, I think, both Sydney and Brisbane, but their beers are available in Perth in package. So if you like your craft beer, you can pick up them at your best local craft bottle shop.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
Are you being sponsored or?
Otherwise, I would have named some of said craft bottle shops, but no.
Other beers are available.
There are other craft breweries available.
But
I'll be getting them from Source, which I've never had. So that's something to be excited when you've not had a beer for over 50 days.
It sounds really good. I've had your quota of beer over the last 51 days, so all good. Two wee things. Celtic TV did a Valentine's Day tweet thing. Watch it. It's so cringeworthy. They stitched up Cal McGregor so badly. He just red as a beetroot by the end of it. He was so embarrassed. It was so funny, but in one of those real cringy, awkward sort of ways. So if you like that sort of comedy, watch that. And the other thing I just want to say is Adelaide Fringe Festival has started. So if we have any viewers and listeners in Adelaide, please go out and support your local acts, because comedians and local thespians have been doing it tough with COVID the last couple of years. So they could really do with going out and giving them your support.
Just one last thing, whilst we're talking about little clips, there's a really good clip floating around in social media of Joe Hart absolutely terrifying Hatate after the match. He sort of slaps him on the back to congratulate him, and he's absolutely... We've not had our one swear, obviously. He pretty much hits himself. And then he turns around and, he realizes it's just Joe giving him a big heavy-handed pat on the back, which is quite funny. So you'll probably find that on Twitter if you have a little look.
Thanks, guys. And my final message from myself is, if you're listening in Western Australia and you're heading out to watch the cup final on Sunday, I'm going to head along to Johnny Fox's myself. I probably won't be in there too early. The music, I think, starts about 7:30, so there is a good long build up to the game. So hopefully if you're in there and you see me and you're listening to this show, just give me a tap on the shoulder, let us know. Good to have some feedback, see some faces of people that listen to the show. Otherwise, I'll see you there celebrating, hopefully, on Sunday. Okay. And that's it for us tonight. Take it easy, everyone. Hopefully you have a good week. Remember, show on tomorrow for some new hosts, new contributors, and the usual Wednesday show. So tune in, please. And apart from that, that's all to say. And have a good night, have a good week, and hail, hail.
Hail, hail.